Hi there, boys and girls. Welcome to Lesson 8.4, Fraction and Whole Number Division. Our essential question for tonight is, how can you divide fractions by solving a related multiplication sentence? Let's get started on Lesson 8.4 in your Go Math book. Now let's take a look at question 2. It says 1/5 divided by 3. That's like saying if you had 1/5 of a whole and you want to share it with 3 people, what fraction would each person get of that one whole? Now in this model that you see here, I have 1/5, shaded in pink. Now if I were to divide this 1/5 into 3 parts, what would then be the answer of 1/5 divided by 3? Let's find out by dividing this 1/5 into 3 parts. So what we'll do is we will divide it into 3 parts. So do you see how I made the lines go across? So now I have 3 parts of that 1/5. Well, 1/5 divided by 3 would equal 1/15. And I'm going to go ahead and show you right here why. Because if we had 1/5, one part out of 5 parts shaded in, and you're cutting it into 3 parts, well then each one of these parts is now 1/15. So let's go ahead and shade in that 1/15 right here. And this shows that 1/5 divided by 3 would equal 1/15. And our related multiplication sentence would be 1/5 times 1/3, because we're finding 1/3 of our 1/5 part would equal 1/15. And there's my 1/15 portion. Okay, for question number 3, the question says 2 divided by 1/8. That's like saying if you had 2 whole pizzas and you want to know how many 1/8 slices would you have, how many would you have? I'm going to go ahead and draw a model to show you how you'd figure that out. You would first start out by drawing 2 holes, and then you want to divide each hole into 8s to know how many 8s would you have. So as you can see here, I made 2 holes. I divided each hole into 1/8 parts. And so the question says, if I had 2 divided by 1/8, how many 1/8s would I have? You can see right here that we have 8 1/8s and another 8 1/8s. So our related multiplication sentence would be 2 times 8 would equal 16, because I can have 2 groups of 8. So I would have 16 1/8 pieces. So for number 4, the question says 1/3 divided by 4. So we're going to look at what is 1/3 of a whole divided into 4 parts. It would look like this model. We would have 1/3, just like this picture, and then we're going to divide this 1/3 into 4 parts. I'm going to do my best and draw 3 lines going across to show 4 different parts. So do you see how we had this 1/3 and we're dividing it into 4 parts? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now out of this whole, 1/3 divided by 4 would equal how much? What is one part of that? It would be 1 out of 12, because you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So let's go ahead and shade in one of those parts. So again, you can see 1/3, which is right here, out of 3 parts. We're dividing that 1/3 into 4 parts. What's the value of each one of these parts? You would have 1/12. Now my question says write a related multiplication sentence to solve. So we're trying to find 1/4 of my 1/3. Do you see how we have, this is going to be 1/4 of my 1/3 part? So it would be 1/3 times 1/4, because we're finding 1/4 of my 1/3. And of course, each one of those parts would be worth 1/12. For number 5 is very similar to number 3. What we're going to do here is we're going to think about it like this. If I have 5 holes divided by 1/4, think of it like this. If I had 5 pieces of cake and I want to know how many 1/4 pieces are in 5 holes. Well, all you have to do is draw a model of 5 holes and cut each hole into fourths. So let's go ahead and do that. So here are my 5 holes. If I were to cut each of my holes into fourths, how many 1/4 pieces would I have? Because you're dividing each of your 5 holes into fourths, you would have how many 1/4s? Let's count them up. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So 5 divided by 1/4 is going to be 20. Our related multiplication sentence for this would be 5 times 4, because we have 4 in each one of our holes. We have 4 1/4s, and so we would have 20 as our answer. So for number 6, we have 1/2 divided by 2. Here's my model. So here's my model of 1/2. Now if I wanted to divide my 1/2 into 2 parts, we would just make a horizontal line going across the middle of it. So I'm going to do that. So now my question says 1/2 divided by 2 would equal how many parts? So if I had a half of a pizza and I divided it into 2 parts, how many parts will each person get? Each person should get 1/4, because as you can see here, I divided my 1/2 into 2 parts, just like it says here, so this would be the amount that each person would get, 1/4. My related multiplication sentence for this could be 1/2 times 1/2, because you just cut your 1/2 into half, is going to equal 1/4. Remember how I told you that this really, 2 holes is written like that as a fraction. If you flip your division sign into a multiplication, you can flip your 2 holes into 1/2. You just switch the numerator and denominator around. And so this is going to be your multiplication sentence that is related. So 1/2 of a half equals 1/4. And of course it would be shaded like this, which shows you 1/4. So a half of a half equals 1/4. So for number 7, it says 1/4 divided by 6. So you're going to have 1/4 of one whole, and you're going to divide that 1/4 of a whole into 6 parts. Go ahead, and I want you to pause the video and write your related multiplication sentence that you think it would be to see if you have 1/4 of something, of one whole, and you're going to divide it into 6 parts. How much would each part be? Go ahead and press pause now. So here's my model of 1/4, and I want to divide this 1/4 into 6 parts. So if we were to divide 1/4 into 6 parts, how much would each part be? 1/4 divided into 6, what would that be? You should say that 1/4 divided by 6 equals 1/24. Our related multiplication sentence for this would be 1/4 times 1/6, because this is 1/6 of 1/4. So 1/4 times 1/6 would equal 1/24. That's my related multiplication problem. Remember, you just change your division sign to a multiplying sign, change your 6 holes into 1/6. So let's take a look at number 8 together. We're starting out with 6 holes, and we want to know how many 1/5 pieces are in 6 holes. So our equation is 6 divided by 1/5. Now on a model, it would look like this. So we want to know if we have 6 holes, and we want to know how many 1/5 pieces are in 6 holes, well, what would be our multiplication problem? If I see 6 holes, and I want to times each hole by 5, because there's 5 parts in each of my 6 holes, I would have 30 1/5 parts, because we have 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5. And if you keep going, you're going to have 30 1/5. So 6 divided by 1/5 equals 30, because there's 30 pieces that are 1/5 size. Remember, my related multiplication sentence is going to be 6 holes times 5 parts in each of my 6 holes would equal 30 parts. And each of my parts has a value of 1/5. Okay, so let's take a look at number 13. It says Isaac has a piece of rope that is 5 yards long. Into how many 1/2 yard pieces of rope can Isaac cut the rope? Go ahead, pause this video, and I want you to answer what you think that answer would be. Okay, for this one, here's my model. I have a rope that is 5 yards long, 1 yard, 2 yard, 3 yard, 4 yards, 5 yards. Now, if I want to cut each one of these yards into 1/2 yard pieces, then we can figure out how many pieces of rope he has. I'm just going to cut each one of these in half. I'm going to take a different color so you can see. Now that I cut each one of my 5 yard pieces into half, now you can see how many pieces of rope that we have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now my related multiplication sentence for this one started out as this division problem. 5 divided by 1/2 equals, we'll have 10 parts. Now here's my related multiplication sentence. 5 yards, we're cutting each one into 2 parts because we're cutting it in half. And here's my related multiplication sentence. You're going to have 10 half-yard pieces of rope. Now let's read number 14 carefully so you know how to set this problem up. It says, 2 friends share 1/2 of a pineapple equally. What fraction of a whole pineapple does each friend get? Now my clue words equally and share tell me we're dividing. So how is this division problem going to be set up? First of all, let's think about our whole that we have. We have a pineapple. Now, right now, the pineapple, they only have a half that they're sharing. So our equation is going to be 1/2 of a pineapple, but we're going to share it among how many friends? We're sharing it with 2 friends. So our equation is 1/2 divided by 2 would equal what? What fraction of a whole pineapple does each friend get? I want you to go ahead and figure out what you think this answer would be and what would be your related multiplication problem to figure this one out. Go ahead and press pause now. Okay, here's an example of what my pineapple would look like. We have 1/2 of a pineapple right here, and we're going to share it among 2 friends. So I'm just going to divide it in half, right down the middle horizontally. And now if we had 1/2 divided into 2 parts, what fraction of the whole would each friend get? Well, one friend would get this fraction and the other friend would get that fraction. So each of those fractions would be 1/4 of a whole. Now our division problem is 1/2 divided by 2 is 1/4, but our related multiplication problem would be 1/2 times 1/2, because you're cutting each in half. Each one would get 1/4. Remember, you can change that to a multiplication sign and flip your 2 wholes into 1/2 by changing your numerator and denominator. And the shading would look like this to show the quotient. All right, I want you to do numbers 1 and 2 on the back side for you to show how you understand what we've done in this lesson so far. And then I want you to do questions 3 through 6 for review of previous material. Somewhere on your page, please put down either 1 for novice, 2 for apprentice, 3 for practitioner, or 4 for expert if you really understand this. We will check these in class tomorrow, so please make sure that you have your Go Math book ready and available so we can get started. Have a great night. Bye-bye.